Well, we have seen that in this crisis there have been several ways how basically the pandemic has exacerbated inequalities that were already existing before. For example, in terms of the division of reproductive work. So very quickly when schools and childcare facilities were being closed down, it was kind of expected that women would basically take again the double pressure and then take care of the children at home as well. But also in terms of, for example, pressure on the labor market. So the sections of the labor market that were probably most affected in this crisis, so the public sector, the healthcare sector, these are really the sectors where predominantly women work. And this is why we could see that there was so much pressure on a group in society that already faces a lot of challenges right now. And this is why it's so important that when we are organizing this recovery, we are really going to organize a feminist recovery that is taking these issues into consideration. Basically, the EU is so important because this big recovery fund that we are negotiating right now, this is really made from the EU level, and there will be a question, how do we invest this money? Obviously, we want to have a green recovery, so this to go into renewable energies, for example, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that this money is going to benefit all groups in society, and specifically also women. And this is where we have asked for a gender impact assessment, and we want to have money being invested in a way that it's going to equally benefit different parts of society, and there women are obviously at the forefront. Currently, we are expecting a proposal, a legislative proposal from the Commission against the gender pay gap. Basically, this has been in the treaties already since the 50s, and that there was this promise that for equal work you would also get equal pay. Still today, we see that this is not reality in a lot of member states. There is still a very substantive gap between what men and what women earn. And we are looking forward to having a legislative proposal here because we have seen that there were so many initiatives taken that were voluntary and none of them really worked in the end. And this is why now we really need to get serious and have legislation on this. Well, basically, what we have seen that in some countries this crisis has also been taken a little bit as a pretext in order to organize an attack on women's rights even further. So we see the existing problems during a pandemic where women are disproportionately affected, but at the same time there was also a sort of backlash. To take one example, Poland, where this crisis and maybe also the lack of possibilities to stand up and to fight against it, for example, to have protests in the streets, was taken to further restrict women's access to abortion. And we have seen these attacks in a number of member states, but I think at the same time, and this is really where we can take hope from, we have seen that women's movements, feminist movements have risen up and have stood up against these sort of attacks, and that this was not only something happening in a national realm, but that this was also something that was happening cross-border, obviously with the European Greens always very much at the front of it also. So in this crisis we have seen that there were attacks on women's rights, on minority rights, on LGBTI rights, and while these attacks were happening obviously under very difficult circumstances with the pandemic, we could also see that there were very strong feminist counter-mobilizations to this. And I think that this is really something that can give us hope that we organize this solidarity also with the support of the European Greens, and that with this we can really go into the future with a feminist recovery and then build a more equal society for everyone.